We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
Welcome back to the Mankind podcast. Today I'm getting together with Rich Kiamco, and this is a content advisory. This show contains unashamed, unscripted, raw stories about coming out, about sex, about homophobia, about addiction, marriage and divorce, love, monogamy, non-monogamy, grieving the loss of a partner. It contains stories about self-love and the battle for self-acceptance. Rich Kiamco is real. Rich is an out gay Filipino stand-up comic. He's done the work over time to be and become who he is. And in this conversation today, Rich tells stories about his coming out, about comedy, about overcoming generational trauma, about his own growth through adversity, about waiting to be rescued, loss, laughter, the freedom of releasing people from your anger. This month, Rich is featured on the ABC show, Our America, Who I'm Meant to Be. See the link below in the show notes. He's been involved in the Mankind Project since 2016, and I met him sometime shortly after that. I hope this episode makes you laugh, feel, and reflect. And happy Pride to all our LGBTQ fans, folks, friends, family, and followers. Hey everybody, it's Boysen Hodgson with the Mankind Podcast, the podcast where we set out to prove, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there's more than one way to be a man. And today, I am going to hang out with my friend Rich Kiamco. And Rich and I have known each other now for, good Lord, at least
2016.
6 or 7 years.
2016. It was November 2016. I went through. Well, I might have met you at some sort of preliminary something, but
so it probably was. It was probably after that. And I wanted to get together with Rich because he and I talk every once in a while, and we've hung out together in some circles in New York City, and he was with me and a bunch of other guys for the Netflix thing that we did on Follow This. And he was in the room when the New York Times came to visit a men's group in New York City.
Yeah, that's me on the cover of the New York Times.
That's
with me. That's the guy in the photo in his back with all the men holding him. I'm laying on my back on the laps of all these men. That's the cover photo of New York Times. I couldn't have planned that. I'm like, I guess I'll cry now.
I guess I'll cry now.
And it was authentic. I'm like, I feel vulnerable. There is a cameraman wandering around this room.
And Rich, I'm also deeply wounded because the last time that Rich and I got together, he made really disparaging comments about the shirt that I was wearing, and I've really internalized that.
Did you take it on?
It's deep. Yes, it's deep wounding.
Did you give your power to me? From my word, did you decide to?
I may have done that, and it reminded me of being a poor child and having to wear hand-me-down clothes from other people and getting made fun of because of my clothing. So
wow.
So Rich, I brought you to do a clearing with you on our podcast.
Oh my God! I felt a moment there, like, ooh, wow.
No, it's just my vanity, dude. That's all.
And then I could say hand-me-downs that were made by people related to me that were a third of our age at the time.
Oh, that was the other piece that you did in that. Yes, that was the other thing that we went to. So first of all, Rich, talk about who is Rich Kiamco?
I'm Rich Kiamco. I'm a openly gay Filipino stand-up comic, Filipino-American stand-up comic. What else? I'm a member of Mankind Project. I've been a member since 2016 when I went through. I mean, I did visit earlier, but I was like, oh, this is nice. And then I disappeared for a few years. And then I came back like, I'm ready. I'm willing. I came in at my knees. I'm like, my life was at a crossroads. And I was like, I was actually having Thai food with my friend Scott Fried, and he just started doing a process with me. He's like, do you want to get into integrity with yourself and with your husband about what's happening right now? Because the short version of this is like I was the first part of the first same-sex couple to be legally married in the state of New Jersey. Wow. My partner and I had met years earlier. We've been together, 13 years, and which is a long time in the gay universe. That's like 3 Triassic periods, and we had decided to have an open relationship, an open marriage, and I had fallen in love with some other person that was not my primary partner. And I was like, what is happening? Like, this is not... I thought it'd be fun. Oh, just hook up. We're gay. We're cool. We can totally just hook up casually. And, like, I'd say 99% of the time, that was totally the lived experience and truth. Like, it was fun. And then this person showed up who I had just, like, I didn't realize what was happening, but I'm like, oh my God, I understand and know all the lyrics to every Whitney Houston song now. Like, what has happened to, like, I hear things now that I haven't heard... But I realized, like, I was enmeshing with someone, and but I had to get clear about what was happening with myself and with my partner, and I thought, okay, let's come to the Mankind Project. We were doing couples therapy and a bunch, I was doing therapy, and I was like, well, let's do this because this seems like this will help me kind of get in there, because I was definitely disappearing into this other world. I mean, here's the other thing too. I also, we were driving back from Vermont on Expressway, and I'm driving, and there's some Whitney Houston song, and I'm crying silently to myself, and I'm like, okay, God, my partner is in the passenger seat, and I'm like, God, I just need a sign. Like, do I stay? Do I leave? I don't really know what to do. And then, like, within I don't know how much time, a rock or brick hits the windshield on his side of the car, and I'm like, oh, but he doesn't die.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not clear what that sign means. I should have asked for a text, right?
not a brick, not a sign,
right.
a different kind of sign.
Because I have to project meaning onto that. But I think a text would have told me yes.
Clearly.
No, right? I mean, I joke about that, but it just was one of those moments where I'm like, I gotta do some work and find out. So the Mankind Project is where I really... And the crux of it was like, one, we didn't have a clear agreement. And I didn't actually understand what was happening to make that agreement, to break the monogamy that I actually wanted, 2 years into the relationship. But I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. And, then I can hook up with all the other hot guys that I'm not hooking up with. That just seems like good. That seems like really efficient gay math, right? Not really looking at what else is happening inside of me.
Yes, right.
I'm just going to look outside. Oh, yeah, I'll have everything on the buffet.
External, right, yes.
Right. But I realized I had abandoned myself. I abandoned this value I had of like, I would like to create I didn't have the language of a container, but I knew I wanted a monogamous relationship with just the two of us. But my partner said, I don't really want that. Let's open it up. I'm like, let's try it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's fun. It's amazingly fun until the plane starts to crash and you're at 30,000 feet and then the engine cuts out and you're like, why am I enmeshed with this other person? Like, why is that my screensaver, this person? So, one of the things that happened, in the weekend, we learned, like, we really weren't in integrity with each other. My partner had also not made a clear agreement. Mm-hmm. And I remember them saying, like, hey, so how is this like other agreements in your life? Is that how is that? It was weird because it was all my fault because I fell in love, right? But then he actually had to look at his side too. Like, well, why did you create this agreement that was so open and no kind of boundaries? And no, it wasn't clear. But even if we had those, I don't know how we would have. I'm glad it happened because I had to confront myself. Like, what is this? This is me. This problem's going to be here whether I'm in a relationship or not. There's something I'm doing, right? And it wasn't until later. March 2017, I remember doing a set because you could meet every week in an I group after the weekend.
Right.
And I was doing a scene, recreating a scenario of like, okay, it's me at age 5. This is the classic scene. My dad beating me. I'm in the room. I lock the door. He bangs on the door. He yells at me. I'll give you something to cry about. And and I get quiet, but I'm crying inside. I'm looking out the window, longing for a policeman or a fireman to come by and rescue me from this abusive household. Now, I lived in the woods, right? There's no there's no traffic past my bedroom window. You know, maybe like squirrels or rabbits or something, but no policemen or firemen. But my fantasy was that someday, somehow, a fireman's or policeman's going to be wandering by on the second floor, you know, levitating past the window to know that this is happening. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy and projection, right? But that was the coping mechanism. That's the story I told myself that I used to cope with this trauma. Now, fast forward X amount of years, here I am, you know, in a relationship that I'm not sure if I want to be in, or having some conflicts, but then I meet someone who I feel is like he sees me and he really gets me, and I, you know, we could be sexually versatile. I can be all the things I want to do with, you know, that, you know, I'm achieving certain things sexually that I wasn't getting, but it really, what was I not getting emotionally? And the bigger thing was like, what was I not giving to myself emotionally?
Yes.
I was trying to get through sex or through these kind of interactions with other people. You know, I also married a wasp. And, you know, wasps, as I said before, have three feelings. I'm fine, you're fine, we're fine.
Oh.
Fine. And that's not totally true, but I did marry someone who was not, say, as fluent in accessing feelings as I was. Yes. Right? But I also had a stopwatch and a clipboard of like, okay, I need you to evolve and get your shit together. We're in couples therapy. Let's go. Now, which is not a container that's safe to create intimacy, closeness, awareness, and growth. That's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute and going, well, I'm going to give you a parachute if you can tell me what you really feel. Well, I can't feel anything now other than panic and free fall. But I think if I hold this to you and withhold this parachute while we've jumped out of a plane, we are going to fix this problem. Right? Like, I didn't know that wasn't how you create the healing space. I was raised, my dad was like, you know, workaholic. And, you know, I had a conversation with my dad. This is just a couple of years ago, but this year. I didn't talk to my parents for 2.5 years. When I got divorced, my parents were very Catholic. They could not accept that as, I mean, it was hard enough for me to be out and gay. But then after they finally, years, you know, 30 years, 40 years have gone by, they can finally be comfortable with me being gay. But they're not comfortable with me being divorced. Right? So they had their own process with that. But my parents moved my niece in with my ex-husband in my old house. And I'm like, well, but what? There are boundaries, right? Like, but, you know, I understand my mom had 20 people in a hut, one-room hut in the Philippines. No water, no electricity, and definitely no boundaries. You just sort of... It's just culturally what you do, and you just take care of each other, and it's not about you having your own specific needs. It's about the collective. It's like it's pre-socialism. It's just we're in a hut, stay alive, be thankful that the Japanese aren't burning the village down and bayoneting babies and setting the village on fire. Because that's what my parents grew up with.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember I called my dad after he had been hospitalized. The garage door fell on him because he was too cheap to hire someone else to fix it. And so it felt, but you know, he's fine now. But it was one of those come to Jesus moments where I called my dad and I'm like, I wasn't sure if he was going to make it. He's fine. But you know, I'm like, I got to call him. I can't be withholding this conversation. Because I asked before, I said, look, you moved in. I'm like, why? You know, can we do family therapy and just talk through this? I'm uncomfortable that you've made this choice. And my dad's like, oh, can't we just FaceTime? You know, my brother gave me the GTFO, whatever, said a lot of toxic things in an email. I'm like, fine, I'm not talking to any of you. Because I even found an MKP experienced psychotherapist in Chicago that lived near my parents' house. And I'm like, we could all go to this guy. He's fluent in MKP, and he's a psychiatrist. It'd be awesome. And in family therapy, it'd be awesome. But my parents didn't want to do it. So, you know, I call my dad. We're FaceTiming in the hospital. My dad's like, well, why didn't you talk to us for 2.5 years? And I was like, do you really want to have this conversation? I said, I really wanted to have like a therapist to facilitate. He's like, my dad's like, it's going to take at least 10 sessions for me to feel comfortable to have this conversation. Why don't we just have this conversation? And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, do you remember that time I ran away from home when I was 13? And my parents were both like, you ran away from home? This is why I'm in all these programs, in recovery, and in therapy, and in Mankind Project. You don't remember when I ran away from home? Why do you think I became a stand-up comedian? I'm begging for someone to see me, to notice me. I mean, it's insane, right? My parents, what's beautiful is my parents were like, look, we don't remember that happened, but that's still your truth. I can't believe my dad's saying this. Cool. My dad has been abducted by some, like, awareness tractor beam. He's like, but that was your truth. And for that, I want, my dad's I told him, like, look, you beat, when I got divorced and you decided to move my niece in, and I told you I wasn't okay with it and you didn't care, it reminded me of that time I ran away from home because you took a plate, you hit me with it, it broke, it cut my arm, you made me clean up all the broken shards on the floor, and you screamed at us, made us sit at the table, say grace, the Lord's Prayer, the long version, not like, it's the extended version of a prayer. And then I just ran up, I just excused myself to go to the bathroom, and I ran out. I was just wearing a t-shirt, a pair of shorts that I had sewn in home ec, no shoes, no socks, and I just got on my 10-speed bike with like the spiky little pedals, and I just biked away. And they don't remember that. They don't remember that. Like, I disappeared. The police were called. Everyone in town knew what happened. It was a big fucking deal. And the abuse stopped because now the police were like, look, we can't, your child has to be missing for 48 hours, so they're technically a runaway. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, they've called everyone in town, so everyone knows that it happened. It sort of like was an accountability shaming to my parents because now they had to call everyone to explain what happened. So it stopped. I came home that night and my mom's like, "Don't ever do that again." Like she blamed me. And then I walked up the stairs past my dad, and we just sort of didn't even look at each other. But it was one of those like, it stopped. Like it was the only thing a 13-year-old could do at the time to like. I didn't know I could just report them to the police. I just didn't. This is not to say there's no child protective services in those days in the middle of Wooddale, Illinois. We're nowhere. But my dad said, "Look, this is not an excuse. I just want you to understand the context. Like when I was being raised, or when I came to America, I was going to do a better job than what my parents did. I made sure I said I loved you. I made sure I hugged you. I provided for you. And I'd always tell you I loved you and I would hold you. I didn't get that growing up. When I made, one time, Grandpa, this machine in the family business broke and, Grandpa had to go to the hardware store to get something to fix. This is in the Philippines, so it's, whatever. My grandmother comes home and she's like, "You broke this." My dad's like, "No." And he's like, "You broke it." And the mother and the grandmother took out these, wooden sticks, started beating him, then put a noose around his neck and tried to hang him until he admitted that he had broken this thing. And he's like, "But I didn't." He's like, "You're lying." And they're like pulling the noose and they sent him to his room with the noose around his neck. And you stay in that room. You keep this noose on until you're ready to confess. And they never apologized. Like, my grandfather came home and he's like, my grandmother's like, "Oh, Robert broke the machine." He's like, "Oh, no, I did. I had to go to get a piece to fix it." She never owned up. Never talked about it. He went to bed with a noose around his neck. I mean, it's insane.
So maybe we could have a conversation about healing intergenerational trauma?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I was like, "Dad, I just want to share this with you. I don't need you to agree with it. I don't need you to get it." Because I'd also done my work, in MKP, in 12-step, in recovery, in my own, I was writing these amends letters, whether I sent them or not, but I had to take ownership of my part.
Yes.
I had to make peace with what had happened, even if, I was a kid. I didn't make my dad cut my arm with a broken plate.
Yep.
But I did withhold my love from him for the last 2.5 years, and I had, distanced myself, all these things. So, but by being able to, when he said, "Well, let's talk about it," it was the first time I'd ever been in this. It was like a fantasy scenario where I'm like, I can't wait to have this conversation and you're going to frickin' own it. But I wasn't in a situation like that. I was like, well, I just want to share my truth. I don't know if my dad's going to own it. My dad doesn't need to own it now because I have taken care of myself.
Yes.
Because that earlier scenario where this is like in March 2017. Someone plays me at age 5 and someone plays my dad and my dad's yelling. This is the reenactment of the carpet work. And so
Yes.
they're yelling at me, banging on the door. And then I have to go, my kid's crying in the room. I'm like, well, what do you want to have happen? I'm like, and I'm crying because I'm so caught in this scenario. It's so traumatic. But I climb up to the window. I'm the fireman. I'm with the ladder. I smash the window open. I grab myself and I hold myself and I tell myself, like, I'm here now. Come with me. Dad is ill. There's something wrong with how he deals with anger. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a beautiful child. You get to play with flowers and bugs and in the dirt. Whatever you want to do, you can do. You can like other boys. You can want to hug other boys. And that's fine. Come with me. I'm in charge of taking care of you now. And I'm sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And that, experience, like I had to switch, and hold myself and give it to myself. And I'm just like, my whole body is shaking, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, how is this happening on a Monday night at like 8:45, on 37th Street and 8th Avenue? Like, this is just, my mind is like, this is like I was on the weekend again. But I think this is what's beautiful when you do the weekend and you meet with people, you create this safety, and slowly you're unknotting all these tangles.
Stories.
All these, stories that aren't real, stories that don't serve me. And so from that, I learned that I have to rescue myself. Mm-hmm. This whole time I wanted this guy that I was in love with outside of my relationship to rescue me. And when I finally did this process, I woke up in the morning and it was silent. When there's a snowstorm and New York City is closed and there's no traffic, my brain for the first time, it was not, my screensaver was this person. And now it was just like, oh my God, I haven't seen the world in this way before. It was quiet. My brain was quiet. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not thinking about, what was his name? Oh my God. Like there was something neurologically that it was like I was trying to itch that scratch with this person when really I could just go inside there and go, oh wait, you know what? I can take care of myself. And it's not enough to say that. It's like there was something about physically reenacting, watching that scenario, and then emotionally, energetically going to that like reconnecting to the original wound where this pattern came from, and that I'd been repeating unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And it's like my life changed in that thing. I'm like, oh my God, I have a superpower. I can rescue myself. Oh my God, I've wasted how much time trying to get something to be the answer other than me.
That was a beautiful story. That was a long, roundabout, 3-generational story ending in Rich Kiamco has a superpower.
Right. Which was just to take care of myself. To rescue myself. I mean, that self-abandonment has been running all these behaviors that had not served me. People pleasing, workaholism, hypervigilantly, micromanaging other people's lives. Or just giving feedback, unrequested feedback. You know what you should do? Shut up and let other people have their process. It's like the prime directive in Star Trek, right? You don't just land on a planet and start telling them what to do, right? You're just like, oh, okay, don't interfere. Let this thing evolve as it does. But I can see other people's homework. I want to do their math so bad. Like, I was math team champion. I was used to like, get the answer. And I was good. Spelling bee champ. Oh, that's another thing. I had a spelling bee. My parents, this is classic. So my parents were coaching me to be a spelling bee champion. So you understand, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they're like yelling words out. I'm spelling them in the shower. I'm spelling them. My bedtime stories were just more words. They're driving me to school. They're picking me up. Every minute was spelling, right? And I won. I killed it, right? And the next day, they put a banner up in my school, and there was a girl that became like my fan club president. She made these little buttons, and out of whatever tape and construction paper. It was adorable. She was like an Etsy super fan. But my mom saw this and was furious. She takes the banner down. She takes all this stuff and she puts it away. She's like, "What are you doing? You cannot do that. People will not like you. You'll become a braggart, a big head. No one will like you. You'll become lazy and you will fail and you will die."
Wow.
I mean, I'm 6th grade. I just spent how many months, preparing for the Spelling Bee Olympics. I'm on the podium being given the gold medal. And then you shame me off of it, blow out the torch, and smelt the gold down and give it to the poor because I'm spoiled. I mean, it's insane, that kind of deprivational self-abandonment. It is like eroticized in my family and my culture. There's like suffering. He suffers so hard. But it's like, it's this false. It's not really humility. It's annihilation of self. And it's just, who is that serving? It's very strange. Like, just breathe from a straw underwater under an oil slick that's on fire while you're being shot at. That is your noble hero's journey. Don't enjoy this. No praise. And we get to the other side. Shut the fuck up. Go into the next oil slick and swim underneath that. Stop bragging. Don't celebrate or enjoy. Like, we didn't come to this country for you to take naps. Right? That's for lazy people. Like, Americans are lazy. They watch television, eat junk food, and they nap. Like, that was what I was taught as a kid.
Wow.
No, why do you have beds? Beds are for lazy people. It's like, that's how you breed a workaholic, people pleaser. Like, I mean, look, there's great skill in being able to just turn everything off and cranking something out. But you have to be able to, like, turn the key off and just get out of the car. That's not what was modeled for me as a kid. It was not modeled. My mom was adopted by the age of 21. My dad was crowned king of engineers. So they have this golden laurel. They have a coronation. They have a golden laurel. He looks like, Julius Caesar. Like Bruno Mars meets Julius Caesar. Right? Okay. I mean, there's literally a portrait of my dad. There's a trophy room. This other thing is ironic. My parents have a wall with all their trophies.
All their celebrations.
But not me. Huh. Not the kids, because the kids are going to get lazy. So no ornamentation or declarations of it. They'll brag to other people about us, but not in front of us, and we'll never know about it. It's very, like, because it's to control, manipulate, and like groom for excellence.
How did you become a comedian?
My freshman year at FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, they had a dorm talent show in the basement of the dorms. Now, I'm always fooling around and, like, mouthing off, so I thought, this could be fun. Let's just do it. Now, I'm in the laundry room, standing in the threshold to the workroom, and everyone's sitting in their pajamas or sweats on the floor. And it was like I discovered I was Spider-Man. I just started saying stuff, and people would laugh, and I was like, pew, pew, pew. Like I have webbing, actual webbing coming out of my wrists. And it was like I was bit by a radioactive spider of comedy. Like, oh my God, I have to have this. It's my calling. And I would host dorm events. This is in the olden days. So, like, the RAs didn't want to talk about condoms. So they're like, Rich, can you talk about condoms to, like, in the auditorium? Like, we're gonna do a whole gathering, but just go up and talk about condoms. Just tell them to use them somehow, Like, I have to do some jokes about. I mean, now there's like a whole protocol of how to talk about condoms and use. But in those days they were just like, well, we want people to die, but we don't want to talk about it, and we don't have any training. But so I started hosting school events, and that's how I got into it. The first, I think, in the ABC, there's that ABC thing. Yes. I do talk about it. ABC Our America, Who I'm Meant to Be, which is airing all June on ABC Network, and it's also streaming on all platforms: Hulu, Roku, Apple, Fire, Google, Android.
Look for a link in the show notes down below.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I talk about it. But I my first paid booking in the city, I think it was like, God, it was in the 80s. I was still a teenager. And they had a Dice Clay knockoff and an Eddie Murphy knockoff. And they're both, the guys go up and they're like, they're saying horrible things about women. Like, I haven't even heard these words for female genitalia mixed with assault. And the audience is like, hoo, hoo, hoo,
Yes,
hoo.
right.
And I'm like,
Oh, yes.
oh my God. I didn't know you could talk like that about people. I hadn't heard those words before. I mean, these are really creative words for female genitalia. I just was like not even fluent. This is like, tier 4 languaging. Like I was like 4th year Spanish. Like I've never heard that word before. And they go up, the first guy does this thing, assault women, vagina something. The other guy does something else, boobs something, and they're like killing it. Then I get up there, I'm like, hey guys, and I don't open with assaulting women.
Mm-hmm.
And so some guy grabs a chair and he's like, get off the stage, faggot. And I'm just like red, right? And I'm like, and you have to understand, I was going to FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, which is like the gayest university you could ever go to. I mean, people are studying fashion design, interior design, jewelry design. Like guys are going to class in wedding gowns. People are eating tater tots under a wedding veil. Like it's just insane. Right?
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people were still in the closet and not out, but they were expressing themselves. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Because in those days, if you were openly gay, you might not get a backer because they thought you would die of AIDS. So a lot of guys were like, "Oh my God, my wife's gonna look amazing in this Duchess satin." I'm like, you're gonna look amazing in that Duchess satin. But we all had these like shadow behaviors of like, right, shoving who we are under. I was out sort of, but I wasn't running around telling people I'm gay either. I was like, because I wasn't on the spectrum of like flaming, super hot flaming, extra spicy, 5-alarm into like trucker. I was somewhere in the middle of that. I wasn't like on fire, but I wasn't like, bitches, fire engine kind of, I don't know, whatever. I can't think of what hyper masculine things are, but so people assumed I was straight, which is crazy. But yeah, I was so embarrassed and ashamed when that happened. I mean, because I was killing it at school, but no one cared if I was gay, or it was a whole other environment.
It was the thing.
I mean, it was like mostly gay men, half of them closet, but they're all gay. No one cared. People are walking around. I remember a person on my floor was walking around with the meat. This is before Lady Gaga. She was wearing a bustier made out of raw meat. I stored the meat in my illegal refrigerator, and she made this bustier out of chicken breasts and went out clubbing with it. This is like, 20, 30 years before Lady Gaga. Please.
This is what year now?
1987.
Okay.
So, which makes me 12.
12, yes, of course.
Yeah. The exchange rate for my age is different. But the point is that I was so embarrassed. I didn't tell anyone. And when that person said, kill the faggot, kill the F word, the whole room starts chanting it. Because if one guy says it and other guys don't, that means you're all gay too. So they all start yelling. Yes. And the guy's like trying to hit me with this chair. I do like, I'm also in this like traumatized state. So am I dodging am I doing a Matrix move to dodge this chair? Is he posturing? I'm sure he was posturing. I would have been hit. It wasn't like he couldn't have hit me. Right. He was definitely trying to swing in and do this kind of macho posturing. And I just remembered, just my ears were so red, and I couldn't hear what was happening. But I just turned and took the money from the booker, ran down the fire escape. I never talked about it. I didn't talk to it. I didn't tell anyone it happened. And I stopped doing comedy for like 20 years.
20 years.
I mean, look, I was also, at that time, I was the costume designer, and then I became the backup dancer for Judy Tenuta, who was a celebrity of the time.
I remember Judy.
And
Judy,
the love goddess. Hey, pigs. She was this crazy, over-the-top, insane character, and people loved her. And so I'm in Las Vegas with headdresses and harnesses and thongs, and as her backup dancer. And I'm traveling with her, and that's like, it's not my voice, it's her show that I'm orbiting. So it was this weird collision of two things. like one, extreme exposure. This is before, social media. So like, it was, if you saw it on the Howard Stern show or heard it on the radio, or you saw these little clips somewhere, but there was no way to sort of repeat it or virally transmit it, right? So most of the time it was just me coming back to the dorm room in a limousine and crying into my ramen in my hot pot, in my little room, telling my roommates and friends. That was it. There was no like collectively, look what just happened. And the kind of journey of spectacle in those days was not such a social.
It wasn't as public.
Experience.
Yeah.
You were at the live show, you saw it. If not, it's gone. And in Las Vegas, you're not allowed to tape anything or take photos. It's very like all these different things. But I had no container for that. I would cry a lot. I was like so happy, but I also didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. I'm hanging out with Joan Rivers or Michael Bolton, Howard Stern at these events, and then I'm in a stretch limo, and then I'm in this room in my dorm with some other 17-year-old in a twin bed, and we're gonna go get tater tots in the cafeteria. I was like, what just happened?
So you and I are not exactly the same age, but we're pretty darn close to the same age. So and then what happened? So 20 years.
Well, then
in the background.
When 9/11 happened, it was the start of me going, God, if I died today, what would I regret? So I had a one-man show that I toured around for. I did after that happened, I kind of went into solo theater. So you don't have to be funny. I mean, there were funny things in it, but you're doing theater. You're doing all these characters. It's fine. It's not me. So I did that. I got an award at the Fringe. I toured that to colleges, and I was speaking at colleges and motivational speaking, but also as a queer person, as a Filipino person. There's all these student groups, which is amazing. I mean, I'm being flown around. I'm crying, like, oh my God, I'm doing my show. I'm doing this whole thing. And but I know in the back of my head, I'm like, ooh, God, I would kill to just do stand. Stand up is like the sports bar of theater. It's like it's a brawl. It's a mud wrestling of theater. You're just like in there, and you could completely get pinned or slip, fall, get knocked out. Theater is like they're over there, you're here, you have this presentation. But comedy, it's like you're like right in there with the people, and you have to engage and you have to be honest. And if something doesn't hit, you got to deal with it.
If you're enjoying the Mankind podcast, how about taking another step? This one takes some courage, and you have it. Check out the Men's Work Introduction. It's 3 sessions over 3 weeks. New sessions start every month, and we even have a cohort tailored to LGBTQ men. Find out more in the show notes.
In theater, you could just keep doing your scenes and whatever. I feel bad they didn't get that or whatever, but it's not the same kind of intimacy.
Yes.
And instant feedback of like it's working,
Yes.
It's not working, it's working, it's not working.
And the expectation, it seems, is that it's intended to be vulnerable. You're supposed to be talking about yourself up there.
Right.
You're supposed to be sharing. Yeah.
Something, and not everyone gets this. There's different ways that people present, but
Yes.
you still have to. You're still vulnerable in that if they don't laugh, you have to deal with it.
Yes.
Right. In theater, like, doesn't matter. I'm just doing this scene. I'm not interacting with the audience.
Yes.
I'm presenting to them. But when I turned 40, I was like, shit. If I died today, what do I regret? I'm like, I regret that guy with the fake FUBU jacket told me to get off the stage.
Yeah.
But really, like I said, the realization was it's not that he said get off the stage, F word, it's that I said to myself, get off that stage.
Yes.
I kept telling myself that, and I kept hiding underneath those people. Because a part of me agreed that I don't deserve to be on stage. Because underneath that, it's like, I don't deserve to be visible. I don't know if I'm really lovable. So then why even get up there and risk that?
Yeah.
So, so I'm doing comedy. The pandemic happens. I do get divorced. And I'm glad I did. Although I can, with all the other growth now of like not abandoning myself, would it have played out that way? But I couldn't if I hadn't abandoned myself, I don't think I would have had that dynamic in my relationship. Or would I even married that person if I had not abandoned what I wanted to really create and said, you know what, I'm willing to wait for someone who wants to create this monogamous container and try that. I mean, maybe I'll experiment with something open, but not because I feel I have to do it for you. It has to be a conscious decision that I'm making for me, not just to like, okay, well, that's just the easy way to not deal with the underlying fear of, you know, men with abs won't commit to me. Muscular men won't commit to me. They want to fuck me, but they don't want to commit to me. And so when I met Sandy, my last partner, you know, we had actually dated in the 90s, but he was doing drugs. And I was like, oh, he's hot, but he's a mess. Like, he was such a slick, like, hey, you want to do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, he's such a New Yorker. He's so like, hey, Brooklyn, you want to fuck? I'm like, what are you smoking? I have to go. A lot of salt. Too much butter. Bye. I mean, I had a whole lot of hypervigilance because it didn't have to be drugs. If you were using a lot of butter, I would leave. I'm like, that's a lot of butter. I'm out. Because my fear is like, I don't want someone to die on me. If they get, you know, high blood pressure or hypertension, whatever. And this is also my parents' hypervigilance because they were like,
yes,
because we watched the neighbor die from cancer when I was a kid. Oh, she didn't have a good diet, so we have to be perfect, clean, and then. But I had this thing in my head, like, well, then I will never date someone who doesn't eat and live perfectly. So, but Sandy and I reconnected. I auditioned for him in 2013. I didn't remember him, but he remembered me. I just remember like, oh my God, this guy's hot. Oh my God, this is crazy. I can't. After my audition, I don't see him. He's watching me in a comedy club, but I talked to him at the bar afterwards. I'm like, oh God, this is like embarrassing. But don't look at him. Just eyes up. I don't know where to put my eyes. I'm like very attracted. He remembered me. I didn't remember him. It had been 17 years, you know, and at this point he looked a little, I think he was a little more, whatever. I don't know. I don't remember. But we worked together for 3 years. He's very like spiritual, motivating, and like, you know, to run as a talent agent, you have to be an optimist and a workaholic and a hustler. So 3 years into that, I started going through this whole like divorce situation, and then he and I ran into each other in like recovery rooms and at a retreat, and we're like, oh my God! And so we became like spiritual buddies. And we played tennis on holidays as single men. He was breaking up with his partner. I was going through my bottoming out and withdrawal and abstinence for like 7 months of nothing. Like I can't even touch myself. Just sit with your pain and then see what comes out if you can't escape through food or sex. You can't touch. You're going to touch yourself to go to the bathroom, and that is it, right? And it was great. It was like I felt like I was being slightly simmered and seared the whole time, right? I was crying and bargaining, but it was so important to do that because I couldn't get on social media and like stalk somebody or just check on their life. You know, I couldn't hang out with people that were hot and unavailable or blah, 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 or just meet new people and kind of disappear into the possibility. I had to sit with my pain and look at my life, right?
Yep.
And so that's also when I had that thing where I had to not abandon myself, rescue myself. Because I was available. I didn't have anything in my body. I didn't have any drug or sex or whatever to like, I was completely lucid and raw.
Yes.
And so then, you know, I tried dating again, and Sandy actually played tennis with this other guy I dated who wasn't available, but I was having fun, and Sandy was watching me, and eventually, and Sandy even played tennis with him, you know, for doubles to cover for me when I was on the road. But once I had to go through my big withdrawal and do it all over again, Sandy asked me out. And I'm like, why would you go out with me? I've told you I've texted you these ridiculous texts of all this shit that I've done in the last, you know, just turn it over and be honest. Like, you've been backstage. You've seen all my emotional clutter.
Seen it.
How could you date me? I don't want to date me. You know? I mean, I want to date me, but I would be apprehensive if I saw all that, right? Because he saw what happened. He heard it all. But I'm like, okay, well, I need to talk to my sponsor and my people. You need to talk to your people. We need to talk to our teams and my therapist and your therapist and all that. But we did it. I mean, it was hard. But we were doing couples therapy. We're doing chapter 9, which is like couples in recovery. So you can't take someone else's inventory. This is like Olympic graduate level relationship carpet work, because you have to own your projections live.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, okay, he would say like, look, you're not my mother. I don't like it when you talk to me that way, but you're not my mother. You sound like my mother because you talk, but I don't want to put that on you, but I don't like it. I don't like the tone, and it's my work. He would say this shit. I'm like, oh, this is so hot. This is so hot. I've always fantasized about being with a man that could like own their projections live. That's fucking hot.
With a Brooklyn accent.
Right. He's like, you know, you go fuck yourself. I do the chicken dance. We start having a fight. Do a chicken dance to interrupt the escalation, right? There's just to break it. Okay, moratorium. It's like, you know, go fuck yourself. Do your chicken dance in the room. I'm going to write in my journal, you do your fucking chicken dance in the room. And it was so, like, but it was something to stop a fight from escalating, right? And so I would go in the other room, I'd do a chicken dance, then meditate. And I'm meditating so long, I forgot we were fighting. And he's like writing, you know, filling all these pages up in his journal. And then he comes in the room, he's like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, sorry, what's up? He's like, oh. And we came over and like, are we going to talk? Are we going to do a dialogue? And so at first you sit and you hold gaze and you breathe. And we're breathing. And I'm like, I forgot what we were arguing about. But it was hot. It was like really heated. And then we just looked at each other and then we started making out. And I'm like, this whole time, it was some argument over like, we were watching some documentary about racism. There was at 13. I forgot what it was. He was like talking during it. I'm like, shh, I'm trying to watch this. Like, don't you fucking shush me. I'm like, but the person's being shot. You know, and like, we're both triggered because we're watching something really like heightened. So like, it's a perfect storm of like, you know, when two puppies accidentally bite each other, but like, we're not actually fighting, but but we're doing things that trigger some. You know, you just poke me in the eye. Well, you put your elbow in my eye. Well, you put your eye in my elbow, and you know, whatever. Everyone's freaking out. But it, you know, there's something beautiful about being able to, you know, I mean, so this short version of the story is my partner Sandy died from COVID, and you know, it's before we had vaccines, before you know, we could, you know, we were as safe as I don't know. I thought we were being safe, but. You know, I didn't see him when as soon as he was tested positive, I'm like, I'm staying over here. You gotta, I would send food over, you know, but then like within a week he was in a coma. I mean, an induced coma, but because he just could not keep his oxygen levels up. And so he was on a machine for a month and then had 3 heart attacks. And I'm like rushing in. They let me in the hospital room and I just held his body while his body went cold. And, you know, I went there because for me, it was like, I want to know what happened. All they've been doing is going on zooming in and looking at him on the machine. And like, I wanted to like hold him in that last moment just to, I don't know. I just had to make contact. Yeah. You know? I mean, I was wearing, you know, all the spacesuit hazmat PPE, but I was, you know, all his muscles were just like, it just was like squeezing cheesecake or something. It was just all after, you know, imagine after a month of not moving your body, it just kind of so you know, I think also MKP was just helpful in like allowing myself to grieve, to cry, to not understand, to not know, you know. And I had a million Zooms every day, you know. Yeah. People just sit with me, hold space. And one thing I love too is like there were men I didn't even know in MKP that would be like, "Hey, you want to call me? You can FaceTime, and I'll just hold gaze. You can look into my eyes if you just need to cry. You don't need to talk. Just like I'll just hold space for you because we couldn't see people in person. Yeah. And also after I held him, I'm definitely contaminated, so I can't be around people. Yeah. Right, safely unless I'm outside in a wind tunnel, wrapped up in whatever, and you know all that. So that was cool to like have guys in MKP I didn't even know just say, hey, call me anytime. We can hold. I'll just hold gaze. I mean, that's like a.
Who does that?
Who does that? And for people listening, hold gaze is just like, look, I'm going to call you on FaceTime. I'm going to look into the screen and I'm going to look at you while you're looking at me, and I just want to hold eye contact while I have whatever feelings I have, which was usually crying, but I didn't want to cry alone in the room. I wanted to at least be with somebody. And, you know, I didn't need someone to fix it. I just wanted someone to sit with me in it. Right? Yep. Like, I think one of the biggest things I learned that was also annoying is like when people are like, oh, just be strong. Just be strong. I'm like, what does that even mean? Just be strong. Like, do squats? Do Kegels? Like, go fuck yourself. Just you want me to be strong so you don't have to feel threatened by watching someone have feelings.
Yes.
Someone sit with pain is so scary to other people.
Yes.
Can you please be strong so I don't have to feel uncomfortable? It's not about me. You know, they're trying to help, but they don't know what to do. Like, they're just, people have been, I mean, I've been taught to make it go away. Have an answer. Have an answer. Just have a really, just like they're in a better place. Like what? A 6-bedroom? Hackensack? What is a better place? Who decides what a better place is? Like, don't decide a person's experience. Don't fill in the unknown with your theory. Just let me sit in this unknown. Because nobody knows. If you knew, then fucking show me. You don't know. And it's robbing me of the truth of what's happening. And how am I supposed to grieve if I'm in some fantasy world of like what's happening? You know, stop talking to me like you know what happened. We don't.
Thank you. We've gone, wow. So we started back at Fashion Institute and we've come all the way up to Sandy. Things have changed, huh? Things have changed in that amount of time.
A bit. I think also, I kind of look back with nostalgia at how, I mean, a part of me is like, God, I loved how open I was to the magic and the possibility. I mean, all these things, you know, becoming the costume designer for Judy Tenuta, getting all these, I got these music videos, I was in these music videos, Marcus and the Spill, who did like Paul Abdul, Elton John, all these, I was in these videos that he shot it when he was younger, right before he was famous, and he loved me. And I just thought, to me, it was so cool to have these little moments, but like all these little things would line up, and I felt like the universe is amazing. All these things just fall into place, you know. And I want to still stay in that permission and possibility, because that's still true. Mm-hmm. I have just had a lot of things come that didn't go the way I wanted. And I'm like, and you could just I could write a story about how life sucks, it's shitty, fucking take it, stop going out there and living your life. Stay in your room and cry in the bed and stop complaining. You be thankful you're alive, and that's it. You have the bar is really low, and shut up. You know, like that kind of dismissive container. So at least I don't have to be vulnerable and be out in the world again, right? And it's funny. Like I was afraid to, like, he was my manager. I felt this loyalty to his agency, but I'm like, what am I doing? If there's nobody, you know, like, what am I doing? They're not sending me out, but I'm afraid to like go, you know, the people in his family picked it up, but I was like, well, they're not sending me out. They're trying to take care of their top clients. So I asked around, and, you know, this other person, it was one of his best friends, like, oh, talk to so-and-so. She's the number one manager in New York. So I went to her. She sent me, and the beauty of beauty is, like, I booked my first dramatic television role on Sandy's birthday. It's like, you couldn't have written that, right? You couldn't have, like, I mean, I guess it's a sign. I don't know. Well, the other thing is, when he was in the coma right before he passed, I was outside having lunch with a friend, and this woman pulls up, and this is New York, this is Jersey City, but, you know, it's the same thing. People come by with these big, giant, like a luggage size, non-carry-on size luggage speaker with like a microphone, and I'm like, oh my God. And they pulled up right behind my friend next to our table. I'm like, can you please not follow your dream right now? Not follow your dream right now. I am processing grief and loss. I think my partner's going to die. I don't know. We're debating whether that little eye movement is a nervous reaction or him, like, trying to signal somebody, you know. And in that moment, she blares the speaker, like, ridiculously loud, right? And it's the song, the radio edit, the exact radio edit that I sampled to be on my phone as Sandy's personalized ringtone. Wow. So when he calls me, that song plays. And it's like, but it's so, I mean, when your phone rings, you can hear it, but it doesn't fill a 4-block radius, right? It's not, you know, fucking Soldier Field. But I just wept and wept. Like, I just felt like that was Sandy calling. I don't know. You know, there are millions of songs that could have played.
Yeah.
It could have been the national anthem. It could have been, I don't know, Eye of the Tiger or some song. But it was that particular song. And it's not that popular of a song. It's not like Butter or some BTS, whatever. Whatever song that I don't know the words to, but everyone knows, One of the 5, 7, 20 Korean guys in that band. I know the song. I know some of it, but I just feel like it's just no. It was it was just an obscure song.
And there it is.
There it is. I know this. Oh my God! It's been like 50 minutes. Okay, do we wrap? How do we wrap? You can follow me at Rich Kiamco, RICHKIA, Amazon Mark CO, on Instagram, or go to my website. I don't know.
There you go. What else? I look in the show notes down below. I'll have links to Rich's website and upcoming stuff. What's
my podcast? WTY podcast. Were you there yet? Podcast. You can listen to my podcast too. I guess. Yeah, it's in there. There's some. I took a break because I was so grief stricken, but I'm back. I'm here now.
You're here now.
Every now and then I do drop out. I mean, I sound great right now, but every now and then I might just lay in bed and like go, what day? I mean, I've woken up like thinking it was, Sunday, and I walk out in the street. I'm like, what's with all the traffic? I'm like, oh my God, it's Wednesday. Like, there are grief. They call it like grief fog or grief bubbles. So every now and then I'm like, I'll forget someone's name, and I've worked with this person. I'm bringing them on stage, and I'm like, get up for. I'm like, Alfira Eisenberg. I know her. I see her. We've hung out at my old farmhouse. Her sister gave me a trowel for my gardening. I know you. I know about your waxing. I know about your orchids and your kit. But my brain was like, all I could see was her Twitter handle, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't. Oh my God, I can see her. You can follow her at Ifirei at Twitter. What's your name? Oh my God.
So with something like that, grief does what it does, right? So anything that you want to say directly to listeners who have been listening to this last 50 minutes of beautiful stories and change and growth and overcoming generational trauma and magic.
Well, I guess with my dad's amends, I had already taken care of myself. So when he said it, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But it wasn't like the only oxygen I was breathing. So I think that also made it safe for him to come forward without me going, well, more, come on, own all of it. I was just grateful that he was able to, one, I wasn't there holding his head emotionally under the water till he owned up to whatever happened. Because I'm like, I don't need you to own anything. So there's a freedom in like releasing people from the prison that I've created of judgment about them, right? With grief, I would say everyone has their own grief journey. So my process is going to be different than yours. And I did do this, I started doing this book, the Grief Recovery book, and you do a timeline of all the things that you've lost and the stories you made up about that. When, my chicken died, when my gerbils died, when my neighbor's grandmother died, when the really handsome husband of the really beautiful woman, the McKays down the street, when he died, I was like, they're so beautiful. How could somebody die that young? And I watched her like lose her shit, and I was like, and look at her daughters. It was like all this, like I didn't understand. And so I had these stories in my head about that weren't true, that I made up because I just watched people say, oh, he's in a better place, or just be strong. I just learned all these weird things that aren't coping. They're not helpful coping tools, right? Like, don't be strong. Just be a mess. Don't do it. Grief needs a witness. Talk about it with safe people. Find groups, grief groups, or just people that are safe. And even tell people, like, look, I just need to share this. I don't need your feedback. I don't want you to fix this. Don't tell me they're in a better place. I just need to be seen. I just need you to hold me while I go through this pain. I don't need you to fix it. I just want you to hold me while I go through it. Because if you try to fix it, you're robbing me of the ability to go through it. And I wish people understood that. People are afraid to talk about it. People are like, hey, Rich. And they give you that weird look like, how's it going? Just no one knows what to do. I'm okay. I said, every now I might lose my shit. if it's at a show backstage, I'm like, look, I'm great. We're doing a show. I might lose my shit for a minute. I might go in the corner and cry. I'll be right back and I'll run the show. Whatever. Or I might forget what I'm talking about to you. But that's, it's fine. We're good. But we're good, and I'm okay that I'm not okay. I just need you to be okay with me not being okay all the time. And I'm okay if you're not okay with me being okay. But stop trying to fix it. Just leave it alone. Just be here with me. Let it finish burning. Let the building finish burning down. You're not able to put it out. Just let it, because when the meteor hits, there's a fire and everything gets destroyed in its path, right?
Yeah.
And then things grow back. And I have this garden of my new life I've built in this crater. It's not that I'm trying to fill in this crater and that it never happened and Sandy never died. It's like, wow, this has shaped, someone on this dating app, very handsome, all the tennis and muscular and all this, oh my God, this is great. And then he started saying stuff in his chat. And I'm like, well, what are you into? And then it got really explicit. I'm like, go to grind. I said, I'm more than willing to talk about this. And I said, well, I'm into this and that, but I want to know what it's like for you. Do you have the capacity for an intimate relationship? Do you have couples conflict skills? I'd like to have that conversation. It's a little early for that too, but that's probably more of what I'm looking to discover about you than your measurements. But there are apps where they will just give you every measurement and detail. And, when I look at these, the other apps are it's like an erotic hologram of each person. It's like a cat. It's like, I don't know if they want a date, a hookup, or a second opinion. Right? Is this your photo or a polyp? I don't know what I'm looking at here. Right? But I'm looking for intimacy. And I'm clear about, I have to go through this withdrawal and all this stuff because as a gay man, sex is infinitely accessible at all times. It is you don't even have to want, it's presented to you all the time. I was in a laundromat in Provincetown and I'm not even thinking, it's women's weekend, so it's mostly all women. It doesn't matter. I'm not even in the mode of cruising. And I'm just doing laundry. And at some point, some guy's like, hey, what's the time with the dryer loads here? And I'm like, oh, well, it depends on how big the load is. And I look at this guy, I'm like, he's not talking to me about the dryer. He's cruising me. But I'm not even, he was very attractive. I was definitely like, oh, but I'm not even wearing appropriate, I'm wearing this reflective vest because all my other clothes are in the laundry machine. I just have anyway, but what I'm saying is that it's so easy to be just swept away by, apps and sexual conquest.
Surface.
But it's in the gay community. It's not even gay. It's just, if it was only men or even straight men just said, I'm just going to have random orgasms.
Right.
Then if straight men could have as many random orgasms as gay men could, because there are no women that have been slut shamed. Not that, look, there's a whole other conversation about toxic masculinity, slut shaming, and all that. But the idea that there are no repercussions for any type of behavior like that. I'm sex positive. I've done a lot. When I made my list, there was everyone I've been with. That was a spreadsheet that was multiple pages. I have definitely tasted the fruits of a lot of laborers. Let's just say that, right? But I also am clear now that to cultivate something that I really want that's meaningful, I need to start in a different place, from a different framework. Because, what I had with Sandy was so satisfying. Even a fight where he's like, I don't like the way you're talking to me, the tone. And I'm like, okay, time out, moratorium. I don't like your tone about my tone. Was infinitely more satisfying than these hot guys that I'm hooking. There's still hot guys that I've whatever. It's fine, but it's not going to satisfy that hunger. It's a really great, a Reese's peanut butter cup or chips are going to go to here.
Yes.
And that's it. But if I have that, in your gut, you're like, God, I really met someone today. I held him. He asked for something he wanted and I gave it to him. It's a whole other intimacy. And it's so nourishing. I wish I had known this. That's what I told me. I told that to myself when I was 20. I wouldn't have believed myself. I wouldn't have believed myself. But, I can only know what I know from this point. I can only share. And look, I couldn't hear Mankind Project when my friends when Scotty first told me about it, because I'm like, oh, this is really nice. This is weird. Okay, bye. And I wasn't hungry and willing. Once you're hungry and willing, you have to like, once you fall off and like your arm and your leg falls off, emotionally, like, okay, I'm willing. Because before it's like, oh, a couple scars, no big deal.
Merely a flesh wound.
Merely a flesh wound. But when you're in this, like, I've been abducted by this other person, I can't stop thinking about them. What is happening to me? Why am I crying about some man that is not my partner? He's still a beautiful person and we have a connection. And it's my dynamic with that person now is different because he's not the answer. Mm-hmm. Having sex with that person now is like, I did have sex with him like he was the last chopper in Vietnam after Sandy died. That was like grief sex. You will never have sex like that ever again. If someone dies and the hottest person you fuck, if you can grab that person, I will say it's insane. But it's not sustainable, right? That flame's going to explode and then you still have ashes, right? But I did, that's going to happen. And just forgive yourself. Love yourself while you explore who you are through your grief. Because, I also ate a lot of Whoppers, vegan Whoppers. And my triglycerides were like over like a stadium. And the doctor's like, we need to look at that. And so then I just ate broccoli and Brussels sprouts, super clean for 90 days. Went back in there. She's like, oh my God, who are you? How did you do that? I said, I was a rabbit for 90 days. I lived in a hole, and they just fed me grass and kale and broccoli, and I didn't eat anything processed, because even if it's vegan, it's still a vegan Whopper. It's still like,
Oh, yeah, it's still a Whopper.
Still processed.
Still 1,200 calories.
Right. So what's the point of this? I'm just saying, get support. Don't do it perfectly. Allow yourself to have all your feelings. Do not let other people determine your journey of grief. Mm-hmm. It's going to take whatever it's going to take. Everyone's going to have their own journey with it. And some people may need deeper professional help because it triggers some other thing and they can't get it. I've seen people and I'm like, oh my God, but I still can't, I don't know. This person was in a relationship for 30 years. And that's their journey. I was doing all this carpet work, all this MKP stuff of self-rescuing myself from so many different traumas that I was reenacting, that by the time this grief came, it was incredibly painful. But I also thought, well, no one's going to save me from this grief. I'm not going to look for someone to save me from this grief. I'm going to avail myself to community of support, but it's no one's job to rescue me. Mm-hmm. And that kind of idea is so freeing because I'm not waiting for someone to show up for me to have my process.
Yes.
But I call it cheating. It's not about isolation. It's like, grab as many people, get as many numbers. Okay, talk to this person for 5 minutes this morning. FaceTime with that person, get on Zoom. Someone at Christmas spent 4 hours with me on Zoom and we just couldn't stop talking. I'm like, this is perfect. But I didn't. This is some random person from North Carolina on a Zoom.
Yeah.
So it's like I make myself available.
Thank you.
I make myself available for help. And I also choose appropriate places to get that help. Because not everyone, when you pay attention, like, oh, this person is definitely not available for helpful help. This is not, they want to, you could feel it.
Yes.
But there are other people that just, when another comedian friend died, and my college, one of the first people I met in college, Letitia, she said to me, you are the only person of everyone in the circle of people calling me or reaching out that gets it. Well, because my partner just died. So it was, a year later, this happened for her. She's like, because everyone else has an answer. You called. You even said to me, if you want to I could just hang out with you and just pulse. And she's like, that was amazing because that's what I needed. I just wanted someone to be here with me. Because people are all saying stuff at me. And I'm like, wow, well, it made sense to me. But no one knows until they've gone through it. You also have the compassion for other people. They only have the tools they have.
Yep.
They're not going to have more. They're not going to be enlightened. How dare you not be enlightened about grief that you've never experienced? How dare you not know how to help me? Like, they're not going to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all that. I feel like a lot of what you were just saying in this also applies to, so I'm going back to your first stand-up experience. And then fast forwarding all the way to who you are now and the ABC spot that's going to be airing all over the United States and blah, 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 blah.
On Hulu, Our America, Who I'm Meant to Be.
Our America, Who I'm Meant to Be. So it's also Pride Month.
Yeah.
So how about to that 17-year-old kid that's out there right now, it's a different world than it was, and it's still the same world that it was.
Right. I mean, there's different trappings now, too, in that I think apps and social media can be liberating, that you know you're not alone. Because I didn't have those growing up. I had to, like, sneak downtown to the gay community center in Chicago, but, like, lie to my parents, get on the train. I would tell my parents I'm just going fabric shopping. You know, like, that would throw them off my track. I'm going fabric shopping. Nothing gay happening. Oh, my God. But my parents, they wanted to believe what they wanted to believe anyway. I was just creative. But I would find support. But you still need to find ways to have support.
Real support.
Virtual or in face-to-face. But I think also, I don't know how I would deal with social media now because, like, people are only presenting, like, a curated view of who they are online and who they are in their Instagram or whatever they're streaming. And so it's dangerous because it takes away all the messiness of actual lived life. Like, if I just show you all my great, like, yeah, I swam butterfly today. I'm going to put that on my social media. I had this great thing on TV. But I'm not showing you the clutter in my apartment. I'm not showing you that I still haven't thrown out the recycling. Well, I did. I mean, whatever. But there's still, that area over there has fabric and whatever. There's still this, like, blue fake fur, which I was going to sew into a jacket before Sandy died. It's just laying here for the last year and a half. Like, I swear I'm going to make a jacket out of it. I just, I think there's some kind of weird resistance around finishing that because I think part of the closure, I don't know, resistance to that. Yeah, social media does not allow permission for, I would rather that you see every photograph of your life on social media and it would be boring. Because there's all this other stuff that's not that interesting happening. And that's where lived life is. Like, I'm having a relationship with Sandy and he's just, in his underwear, half asleep, watching TV. I come home from doing all these shows in the clubs. I come home and I'm like, oh my God, this is life. I love this. He's passed out. But this is it. It doesn't get better than this. And that's like, and I just curl up next to him and he's like, I'm like, oh God, he's fucking out. He's just passed out into a bag of chips. We talked about food, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, it's the lived imperfection and all that stuff, right? That's the actual lived life. It's not this curation. But of course I want these high highs and these amazing moments, and I want to share this. But there's all this other stuff that's like, it robs me of the proprioception, like the sense of where I am in space and time. Because if I just looked at Instagram, it wouldn't give me the rest of the body of my lived experience. It'd be like, oh no, there's only Chicago and San Francisco and the Netherlands. That's the Earth. Like, no, there's all this other stuff. There's Hackensack. There's Paramus. There's, Billings, Montana. There's all these other places in the world that, or other places I don't even know about that exist. And that's the actual lived life. And all we do is, like, put icons and the trophies. We line up all these trophies and we say that's our life. I mean, it is. I'm still going after trophies. I mean, it's not like I'm at ABC. Yeah. Oops, I'm holding that trophy. That's on my social media. That's like, I'm getting bookings from that, right? But I have to know for myself that, like, there's a trophy inside myself that I get to experience and I can share with other people that no one can photograph and put on Instagram.
Good. Thank you. Rich Kiamco, everybody. It's been really nice. I can't wait to see you again in person sometime. And it's been great hanging out with you.
Oh, I love you, boys.
I love you too.
This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Paul Newell, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now we've got to give special thanks to our back-end team, producer, editor, and audio ninja for the show, Michael J. Russer, and Don Huff, who takes care of our graphics and promotions and pretty much makes us look pretty. So of course, thank you, Don. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. What it means for Paul, what it means for Boyson, that is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.